So, I think dysphoria is interesting, and I'd have to say dysphoria is like the only thing that people seem to think of when they think of trans people. Um, yeah, it's different, though I do think the term trans is clunky. Um, I feel like it could cement itself into like better terminology once we're all like okay with it in the future if we don't nuke ourselves or like overturn more rights with the Supreme Court. So um, it does sound kind of like, like privileged because not everybody can transition, and there's like a small amount of people who do say, well, if you didn't get transitioned, then you're fake trans. um, yeah, I feel like it takes a lot of like convincing if you're really gonna lie to yourself, and that's why I don't think um, trans people are just making it up. It's not like because people compare trans people to like being a walrus, like Matt Walsh doing Jimmy the Walrus or something, which sort of implies that men and women are so completely different that women are walruses. And like, of course, this thing I mentioned about some dude comparing women to cripples compared to men. And anyways, dysphoria is like you you don't feel right on the inside compared to your outside. With expression, I would have to say expression is slightly biological. I know we like to think of the brain and our identities as something disconnected from like human nature, but I think they're just like rearranged, you know. I don't think there's anything new that ever like comes out of, obviously like our enjoyment of video games is new, but we're still utilizing like the same type of neurons to like play it. Um, like I don't think things just come out of a void that suddenly humans are just wanting to express themselves out of nowhere. Especially something simple like uh, um, transsexual people who want to do the binary. Like you're only good. You're doing one or the other. It's not as simple as non-binary or multi-genders, which is interesting, and I don't think came out of a void from nowhere. Maybe some of them are made up and silly, but whatever. Um, I'm wondering, besides just the current, what we see on the outside and what we feel on the inside, I wonder if, like, the overlap of how men and women have acted throughout history is just like laws that you can't, there's always, I've heard that you can't undo a law or throw away laws, it's just different laws on top of each other. But, anyways, when it comes to like man and woman perceptions throughout history, it's just they're all overlapping and on top of each other. They're all there. You could gather them through info about how a culture or a person did this gendered performance, or um, so there's like no strict position, you know. Native Americans back in the day, today probably just, they did the what would be considered like frilly uh, feathers and such, and now men in the West are just wearing tuxedos and stuff. Like there's a complete like design difference there. like the powdered wigs and high heels that men used to wear. Um, that's all like gendered stuff. And this is before we knew like that different X's and Y's and sex differences can express the way you might want to be, um, you know, besides X and XY. I feel like if we took away gender, the expectations would obviously shrink, and it would just leave, you know, as if we're not just assuming women are just wombs the whole time, which at the end of the day, I feel like there's like this hydraulic, like, sexism, or we have some weird animalistic, not animalistic in a negative way, but of course I'm using it in a negative way, you know. I'll get back to why I'm saying this. Oh yeah, so multiple cultures and expressions of gender that people have expressed throughout history, and then people who are dysphoric probably know this a little bit, right? And how on earth would you act if it's all arbitrary? If you really want to present a thing, but then something on the inside says this is arbitrary and doesn't matter because it's changeable, you know? And I think that kind of freaks out conservatives too, you know, because they see the femininity that they see as natural and just automatically occurring, and they are probably terrified that if raised any different, they could, they wouldn't be as feminine or whatever, or maybe their biology would have expressed their femininity like that, or their identity like that. It wouldn't be femininity because it would just be what's expressed, I guess. But yeah, and so if you're completely changeable the whole time, then you're just playing a role that is a choice, right? And that's the argument that conservatives like to use on like gay people. It's a choice. It's a choice. So, yeah, it's not really a choice. Like being conditioned and socialized into a thing to be a certain person, you don't really choose it. You're just kind of like taken along, and it's added on your life. I guess if you're critical thinking, you could overanalyze anything and be like, alright, the reason I like this is because I like that. Like, it doesn't seem fun though. I get the idea that society in America can't handle change at all. And there's always been, I think there was something called the trans panic back in the early centuries when we were talking about trans stuff. Maybe that was like when second wave feminism was attacking it, for the fear of their biological rights, which, and this might sound sexist, but I really do think those fears are instilled by men, because we think the pinnacle of being a woman is just giving birth, and if you can't do that, then you're lesser, you know. And there's always this grueling attitude and of what's it called? when women can't menstruate anymore, you know, there's always those stereotypes that men are just going to treat you different, and maybe it is true. I'm not saying it's not true, because obviously you're biologically different, so there's a slight path that might be taken, you know. Um, all right, the grandmother hypothesis. When women can no longer have children in certain tribes with larger families, women are still useful, but in the West, you know, not so much. Um, I forget what it's called, allo parenting, where like women, even if they can't give birth, they help take care of the children in like a big community. Um, this may this may be an issue for Western thinking because people have rights over their children and they want rights over their children and they have their separate this and that. But when you're just in a community, these are all your children, I guess, for the most part. We know who it popped out of, but we're not that obsessed when the duty is to take care of this child. They would probably just be disgusted by people being like, babysitting your own children. Like, imagine if that was illegal to say. Like, I feel like that would be such a 50-50 split. Because people go crazy when they hear people saying that about taking care of their own children, that they're babysitting. It is really fucked up. It's funny and cute, but if they really mean it, that's not right. Anyways, if women were always valued beyond what they look like and what they can pop out, that would be interesting, and I'm sure they are individually, but statistically at a greater level, just seems like, we advertise to look a certain way with women, and that overall for cis women is probably super dysphoric. And so, we are constantly pushing a message that creates a sort of dysphoria, and there's dysphoric dynamics like when people's neighborhoods are getting like touched up or whatever, and people are pushed out of their neighborhoods and pushed out of their cultures, and they have to live a new life, but the phantoms of their old lives are still there, And I guess it's, at that point, it's just like, oh yeah, migrating people, and we wouldn't consider that dysphoric, it's just sad in its own way. But for the individuals who are experiencing their cultures and their lives change from underneath them, it's probably rough, but there's no strict way to be at the same time. But you can't tell that to people. So it's a big debacle of like people really wanting a lack of change and they want change at the same time. Obviously we can't have it both ways, but I feel like realizing that there is this dysphoria we create by constantly expecting things out of people, like dress like this, be like that, and like there's no going back, obviously.